Greetings everyone. In this video, we will create a weather application using Angular, and we will use a public API from rapidapi.com to get live weather forecast values. This will be an amazing tutorial in which you will learn how to call APIs from Angular and how to use services. We will also use Angular forms to get the user input and search by city name. I would be keen to know where my viewers are from, so do let me know in the comments down below the city you are from and the temperature in your city. As always, if you like the video, like it and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss my next upload. Alright, with that said, let's create our weather application. I will start by creating a folder for myself, and in here I will create my Angular application. I also have a folder in which I have a few images that I will use inside my application. So I'll come back to this folder and I will open my terminal window and I will create my new Angular project by typing ng new, and the app would be called weather app. So weather app, and click enter. I would add a routing and I will select CSS as my style sheet. Once the application has been created by Angular CLI, you can see the folder over here, and we will browse inside the folder first. So I will say cd weather app, and in here I will open Visual Studio Code by writing code dot and click enter. Inside Visual Studio Code, I will open a terminal window and I will run my application using ng serve-o. The application is running and you can see it on the right hand side over here. We will come back to our Visual Studio Code and clean up our starter file. So I will come to app, and inside the app.component.html, I will delete everything and I will keep the last line, which is the router outlet, so that if we want to add any routes later on to our application, we can make use of this. We have cleaned our application and you can see we have a blank slate in which we will create our weather app. If I expand on the browser and show you what we are trying to build, we have this container box which is center in the body, and we have an upper section over here which shows the location and the temperature of the location, and we also have a lower section which has multiple information about the minimum and maximum temperature. It also has the minimum humidity and the wind levels. I think the label is wrong, it should be humidity instead of minimum, and it also shows the wind levels. And we will also create a search button somewhere on the page so that you can also search on different cities. So let's get going. We will first create this body. So I will come back to my Angular application and we will start by creating a container. I will create a div and give it a class of container. And inside this container div, I will have two different divs with a class of upper data and another div with a class of lower data. I will first start by creating the elements for the upper data. In here, I will create two images first, and I will have the sources of images from the assets folder. We don't have anything at the moment, but I will open my resources folder in which I have downloaded a few images and I want to display them in my application. So I will Control A on these images and will drag them into the assets folder. After doing that, I can now assign the source of these images. So I can say dot dot and go to the assets folder, and then use the hot and cold image one by one. After that, I only want to display these images when a certain temperature is met. So I will add if conditions. So I will use the ng if, and I will say when the temperature is less than 15, show the cold image, and when it is greater than 15, show the hot image. So for this one, I will say 14 is greater than 15. I'm just defaulting some values at the moment so that one of these images is visible. I'm creating a static data structure at the moment, and later on when we bind our application with an API, we will change all of this and get the live values from the API. and the cold one would be, let's say, less than equal to 15. So if the temperature is less than 15, which is this one, then show a cold image. If it is greater than 15, which is it is not, so currently only the cold image will show. And if I save this, you'll be able to see the image in here in the browser, and you can see the cold image is getting loaded. It's not looking as pretty as we have our application over here, but we will now create some CSS to make this container box and the upper data. So coming back to our application, and let's come back to our code. In here we will give some styles. So I will go to the styles.css, and in here I will start by creating some root styles. So I have some root styles that I want to use in my application. These are all colors, and I will just use them straight away. After that, I want to remove some margins and paddings from all the elements. And after removing any margin and padding, I want to have the box sizing as border box. And now let's style the body. So for the body tag, I will have a font family first. I will choose Verdana, and after that I will also give the font size as 16 pixels. I will have a width of 100% and a height of 100 VH. I will also give it a background color, and I will use the variable blue. So I will use blue 1, and if I save this, we should have something in the body. You can see we have a blue background and a lot of the other styles applied to the body. Coming back to our application, now we want to style the container. So let's use the container class. We will first give it a width of 400 pixels and a height of 80 VH. And after that, I will give it a different background color, which will be blue 2. And I will give it a border radius of 20 pixels. And I will also give it a box shadow with 10 pixels, 10 pixels, 10 pixels, and then a variable of dark shadow. This is another color that I have in my root over here. So saving that would give us a container. And you can see it's hidden behind the image at the moment. So if I go on and comment these two lines, you can see the container then. You can see the container over here. Now we want to place this container in the center of this body. So I will come back to my application, and in the style of the body, I will display this as a flex, and I will make sure it is in the center. So I will give a justify content of center and an align items of center. And this would make sure that our container box is right in the center. Now we have to work on the upper and lower data. So let's start with the upper data. As you can see in the upper data, we have an image in the background, and we have two labels, one showing the name of the city and the other label showing the temperature. So let's work on that. I will come back to my Angular application, and in here I will create another class called the upper data. And inside the upper data, I will start defining some of the CSS properties. I will give it a position of relative. And after that, I will give it an overflow of hidden. I will give it a width of 100% and then a height of 50% so that it only takes half of the box. I will give border radius to the only top and left side of the div. So I will give it a border top left radius of 20 pixels and same of top right radius of 20 pixels. If I save that, nothing will be shown at the moment because we don't have any data to show it. So let's uncomment those images and now save the application. Now you can see the image inside it because we have overflow hidden. Now let's work on the CSS for the image. So I'll come back to my application, and in the style I will add CSS properties to the background image. So I will use the selector dot upper data and use the image tag. I will give it a position of absolute, and then a top of 0, a left of 0, a width of 100%, and a height of 100%. If I save this, now we should be able to see our image in the top section of the application. After this, we have to work on our labels. So let's come back to our application. In here, I will create another div and I will give it a class of weather data. And in this div, I will have two more divs, one with the location and one with the temperature. The location class will have a static value of your city. And the next div will have a class of temperature. And that will have the curly braces, because I want to display the temperature as a whole number. So I will use the pipe, a number pipe. For example, if your temperature is 14.40 degrees Celsius, I will use a number pipe and I will display it in a whole number. So I will use the format 1.0-0, and there will be a colon over here. After we have created the elements, we will now style these elements. So I'll move to the style.css. In here, I will first style the weather data. I will give it a position of relative. And after that, I will give it a Z index of 1 so that it stays on top of the image. I will give it a width of 100%. And I will give it a height of 100%. I will also give it a background color, and I will use a dark shadow. After that, I will display this as a flex so that I can center the labels. I will give it a flex direction of column so that the labels are one on top of each other. I will give the align items property to center, and I will also give the justify content property to center. Let's save this and view our changes in the browser. You can see the labels are coming over here, but they are not in the desired color or the font size. So let's work on that now. Back in my Angular code, I will first use the location class and I will style this. I will use a color and I will use my variable. I have a white color. After giving the color, I will also give it a text align of center. And I will give it a font size of 1.2 em. After that, I will use the temperature class. And I will give it a color of white. And I will give it a font size of 4 em. I will use text align center. And I will give it a font weight of 900. If I save this, let's go to our browser, and it has refreshed to see we have the label of the city and also the temperature. It doesn't show the degrees Celsius, so let's quickly add that. I will come back to my application, and in the app.component, I will use a degree Celsius after the number. So I will use in Windows, I have the option to use Alt 0176. So if you keep pressing Alt and you type 0176, you get the degree symbol, or you can copy the icon from somewhere as well. And after that, I'm using the capital C for Celsius. If I save this and if I come back, you can see now the temperature looks correct. We have finished the upper portion of the weather app, and it's now time to create the bottom part of it. And if you look at the bottom part, we have to add this more information box in which we have these 4 values, which is for minimum temperature, maximum temperature, humidity, and wind. So let's start creating that in our application. Coming back to our Angular application, I will start creating the elements for the lower data, and I will start with a div with a class of more info label. And inside this div, I will just have the text of more information. And after this div, I will have a container box. So I will create a div with a class of more info container. And in this container, I will have 4 boxes, 4 info block boxes. So I will first create one box and I will copy paste it again. So I will create a div with the class of info block. And inside this info block, I will have a div which contains an image and a span. So div with the class of info block label. And in this div, I will have an image with a source of the minimum temperature. So I will get this from assets. And after the image, I will have the span, which will be the label for this info block, and I will call this min. After this info block label, I will have another div which will hold the value of this info block. So I will create a div with a class of info block value. And in this div, I will have some static text at the moment. For example, the minimum temperature was 10 degrees. And again, the value of degree in a Windows machine is Alt 0176 and then with the capital C. So I will have that. And now you can see we have a div, which is the info block div ready. If I save it over here, I have to still create the CSS files for it, but if I save it, you can see the information popping up in our lower data. So what I'll do is I'll first create the CSS for all of this, and then I will copy 3 other blocks for the info data. In my style.css class, I will start with the more info label. So I will write more info label and I will give it a color of white. After that, I will create a class for the more info container. I will give it a flex of 1. I will give it a background color of light shadow. I will give it a border bottom left and right radius. After that, I will give it a margin top of 1 EM. And I will display this as a flex and have the flex direction of row. And after that, I will flex wrap as wrap. After this, I will work on the info block. So I will have the class of info block. Inside the info block, I will have it to be a width of 50%. After that, I will display this as a flex and flex direction of row. After the info block, I will work on its label. So a class of info block label. I will give it a width of 50% and display this as a flex. I will give the flex direction of column so that they are one on top of each other. I will give a justify content of center and align items of center. After that, I will work on the image. So I will have the info block label and I will work on the image. I will have the width of 1 EM. So that's around 16 pixels for me. And after the image, I will work on the span. So dot info label span. I will have the color of white. And after the color, I will have a font size of 0.8 EM. Now we have done the left hand side of the info block. It's now time to do the right hand side, which is the value. So I will work on the info block value part. In the value part, I will give the width of 50% so that it takes the other half of the block. I will display this as a flex. I will have the justify content to flex start and align items to center. I will also give this a color of white. Now that we have defined the CSS for the info blocks, it is now time to create 4 copies of it. So I will copy the div with the class of info block and I will paste this 3 more times. In the second info block, I will replace the value of the minimum temperature to a max. And I will also change the label to say max. After this, I will have a static value of, let's say, around 20 degrees. The third block will hold the humidity value. So the label would be humidity. And the image of that would be humidity.png as well. The humidity percentage is, let's say 77%. And the values of these ones would be replaced with the original values coming from the API. The fourth block would be the wind speed. So I will have the image of wind and the label of wind as well. And the value for this would be 11 kilometer per hour. And with that, let's save that and see how it looks like on the screen. And you can see that it's not looking as we have in the image over here, because we still have to work on the CSS of this lower data block. So let's come back to our application. In the styles.css, let's see if we have defined the lower data class. So we don't have the lower data class. So let's define the lower data class over here. In the lower data class, I will first have the position of relative. And after that, I will have an overflow of hidden. I will have a width of 100% and a height of 50%. After that, I will have the border bottom radius for both left and right. So I will have a border bottom radius of left and also for the right. After that, I will have a padding of 1 EM. I will then display this as a flex and will have the flex direction as column. If I save this and now come back to my application, you can see that now the images and labels are coming on top of each other because we are showing it as a flex, and the value of the block is coming on the side. So it's looking quite similar to what we have in the image over here. We have bigger images for our information. So let's do that quickly. I will come back to my application, and in the info block image, I will increase this from 1 to 1.5 EM. Let's save that to see the changes. And as you can see, now it looks the same as what we have over here. It is now time to get real values for our weather app and link our Angular app to the weather API. Today, we are going to use an API from rapidapi.com. Rapidapi.com is the world's largest API hub and has public APIs to a lot of different stuff. To use an API from rapidapi.com, sign up on their website. After signing up, you can search and subscribe to the Open Weather Map API, which we are going to use today. Once you have subscribed to the API, you can now make API calls to this API using our Angular application. You can also come to the snippet section over here, and using the drop down, you can get the code snippet for the language of your choice. It is now time to call this API from our Angular application, and to do that, I have to create a service. So under the app folder, I will create a new folder and I will call it services. In the services folder, I'll generate a service. So I'll go to terminal and I'll create a service for myself. I'll use the command nggs for service, and before I can do that, I have to navigate to that services folder. So I will go to cd source app services, and inside that now I can type nggs and I can type the weather service to create me a weather service. The Angular CLI has created me a weather service, and if I come over here, if I open the weather service file, I can now inject the HTTP client. But before I can do that, I have to make sure that my app.module has the HTTP client module. So I will first import it over here, and also in the import statement over here. I'm importing this from Angular common/HTTP, and I'll save it. Now I can close this app.module file And if I come back to the weather service now, I can now inject the HTTP client inside the constructor. As you can see, I've injected the HTTP client, and this is coming from Angular Common HTTP. After that, it is now time to get the weather data. So I will create a method first. I will call the method getWeatherData. And I will take a city name for which I want to get the weather data. This will be of type string. After that, I will use this HTTP client to make an API call. I will use the get method, and it needs a URL first. So I will come back to my rapidapi.com dashboard, and in here I will search for the URL, which is this. So I will copy this and come back to my application. I want to create some environment variables which I can use to make the API call. So I will come to my environment file, and in the environment.ts I will first write the base URL for the API. So weather API base URL. After that, I will also have the header values which I want to use. So I will come over here and use the header values, the names and the values from here. So I will copy this first and create a variable. I'm removing the hyphens from here, and the value of this header is this, and I can name it as a label. And the value of this label, or I can call it the header name. The header name is this, and the header value is what I need to copy it from here. After that, I will have two more similar values which will be for the key. So I will remove the hyphen again and add header name to it. And I will copy the value again. So this will be my header name, and the header value for this one would be this key over here. So I will copy it from here. So that is my API key. You'll have to use the API key that Rapid API has given to you. So after having these values, now I can come back to my weather API service, and this needed a URL. So I know that to make an HTTP call, I have to call this URL over here, and then the query parameters of the city name and other stuff. So I will first use this URL. So I can say environment dot base URL. And after that, I need the information for the query parameters and headers. So I will first start with the headers. So I will have the brackets open, and I can pass the headers as new HTTP headers. And after that, I can use the set method to set the headers. So the name of the header is again coming from the environment file. We have to set two headers, as you can see in the test request over here. One is for the host, one is for the key, and I have all the information inside my environment file. So environment dot the first header name, which is this one, and the environment dot the header names value. And I will use a set method again to add the second header. So I've added both the headers now, and the next thing we want is to add the params, which is the query parameters. So after this, I'll use a comma and have the params field, and again this will be new HTTP params. I can again use the set method to add a param name and a value. So the param names we want to give is a queue and the value of the city. So I'll first start with the param name, which is Q, and then the value of the city would be what we are taking in this method. After that, I will have one more parameter over here, which is for the units. So I want the units to be in metric, so I will use the units param as well. So I will have the set, and I will give the param name as units and the value as metric. And the last set method I will have for the params will be for the mode, and the mode can be JSON or XML. I want my request response to be JSON, so I can come over here and give the param name as mode and the value as JSON. And with that, I have finished my request, and now it's time to map this request to a model. Because we are using TypeScript, it is a good practice to have this mapped to a model. So I will first create a model, and to do that, you can come over here and basically use the test endpoint to test a value. So I'm putting in a request for Auckland as the city, and if I click on the test endpoint, I get the value of the Auckland's weather over here. I can copy this, and I can go to any JSON formatter first. I've come to a JSON formatter and I've pasted the value, and I can remove the extra brackets that I got inside the dashboard. And now if I process it, it gives me the value of the formatted JSON. And now I can copy this value and open another tab in which I will write a JSON to TypeScript converter. You can use any of the tools. On the left hand side, I will paste my JSON value. And on the right hand side, I'm getting the interfaces for all of the JSON value over here. So I will copy all of this, and I will come back to my application, and I will create a new models folder under app. And the models folder will only have one file, which will have the weather model. I will paste all the interfaces inside this weather app, and I can close this now. So we have a root folder, a root interface, and after that we have all the values and all the properties for the interfaces as well. So there's a fix, because I know I've worked with this API before. This temp min is actually temp underscore min. If you use temp min without the space, without this underscore, it will not be able to map the value. This is something that I've used and I know, and I think it's a problem with formatting of the Rapid API. When it formats the response, I think it's not able to get the underscore for the minimum temperature. So that's something to note for. And after that, if I come back to the application, now we can use this root. I can also change it to weather data if we don't already have it. So I can use weather data and map the response of this API into this model. So in here, I can mention weather data. I can import the dependencies from models. And as a return type, I can say this is an observable of type weather data. And because we are returning something, we can use the return keyword. So the service is ready to be consumed. Let's come back to our app.component.ts file. And in here, we will first start the ng on init. So we will implement this class over here, implements on init. And if I now come to here, control dot, it will implement the interface. And I don't need the title anymore, so I can get rid of it. And I can also remove the throw statement. In here, I want to use the weather service. So I will first create a constructor, and I will inject my service inside the constructor. After injecting the service, now I can use this service and make a get call to get the weather data. And it needs a name of the city. By default, we can pass in a city of your choice, or I'm passing Wellington. And we now have to subscribe to this method. So I will use the subscribe method. And inside the subscribe method, I will first use the next. And I will first console the response coming from this next into console.log. And afterwards, we will assign the value of this response into a model, into a view model, in which we can use it on the front end as well. So if I save it and if I go back to my application, I'll right click to inspect and I'll come to the console tab. If I refresh this application now, I can see that there has been an object returned in the console, and the object here is the weather API or the weather data for the city of Wellington. And if we look at inside the main object over here, we have properties like the temperature, which is 18.7 degrees Celsius, and we have temperature max and min. And we also have humidity, and we have wind as a separate property over here, which has the speed and gust and degrees. So we have a lot of data over here, and we are displaying some of the data in our Angular application. So we will use the property, the model that we have binded it to, and we will come back to our application. We will display that into the UI directly. So I can close this now, and over here I will assign in my app.component.ts file where I'm consoling it, I will use a local variable. So here I will use weather data, which is of type weather data, and this can also be undefined in the beginning. And now I will assign this weather data to the response, or I will assign the response to the weather data. So now I can use this weather data inside the HTML file over here. So what I'll do is, because we have this whole container as a static web page, because these values are static, they're not coming from the API, I will copy all of it and create a copy for myself. And I will comment the one with the static files. So I will modify this one. First of all, to the container, I will use an ngIf, and I will write weather data. This is the value of our variable. So I'm saying here that if there is a weather data, then show all of this block. After that, we want to replace this value, which is a static value of temperature, with the value coming from the weather data. So I will use this .main.temp. So that's the model, and this is the property that we have for temperature. I will use the same over here to show if it's a hot image or it's a cold image. And we will also use the name of the city from here. So in curly braces, I will use the name of the city, which is coming from the name property. I can always come over here, right click and inspect, go back to the console to see the object and where the property name is. So as we can see, name is the property name. So I can use the name field. And after that, this is also the temperature. So I will copy the temperature property again. And we have the pipe symbol over here. So it'll format the result for us. After that, in the more information section, we have the minimum temperature, which is also coming from the main section. So I will use curly braces over here and use weather data.main.min, or it is min underscore, I think it's min temp, but let's find out. Let's go to the main, and inside the main interface, we can see it's called temp underscore min. So we have to use the correct property, temp underscore min, and I'll copy that and I'll use temp underscore max in here to show the maximum temperature. After that comes the humidity, which is also in the main. So I will have curly braces over here, and I will use the humidity property. And I'm missing a curly bracket, so I'll add that. And the final value is the wind value. So I will use the wind value over here, inside curly braces, I will have this .wind.speed, and that finishes it. So if I save this, let's see what happens to our Angular application. This is now coming back directly from the API, and as you can see, the weather, the temperature here in Wellington, New Zealand is 19 degrees Celsius. The minimum temperature was 17.73 and the maximum was 19.81. The humidity levels are very high, which is 89%, and there's a small wind blowing, which is 11.32. So we can also modify these two values, or we can use the pipe operator to display it as this value over here. So I'll copy the same. So I'll use this pipe symbol and add this pipe symbol to the curly braces of min temperature and max temperature like this. And if I save it, this should no longer have double digits. As you can see now, our application is working, and it's also showing the hot image if the temperature is greater than 15, or the cold image if it's less than 15. We really want to add just one more functionality, which is searching on a city name, because it's only showing Wellington at the moment, which is the default. And now let's create this search functionality. Back into the Angular application, I will first create the element for the form and our search functionality. So I will create a div with the class of search. Inside the div, I will have a form, and inside the form, I will have an input element that will be of type text, and I will have a placeholder of search city. Now I need to style my form functionality. So I'll come to the styles.css, and right at the bottom, now I need to style my form functionality. So I'll come to the styles.css, and right at the bottom, I will create a search tag first. So I will say search. Now I need to create the styles for these elements. So I'll come back to the styles.css, and right at the bottom, I'll first style the search class. I will give it a margin bottom of 1 em and text align of center. After that, I will use the search class and style the input text box. I will give it a background color of light shadow. I will then remove any outline and any border. I'll add a border radius. After that, I will add padding, and I will add a color to the text as well. I will give it a font size. And finally, I will text align to center. With that in place, I will save it, and I will come back to my Angular application. And as you can see, we have the search functionality where users can now type in the city name that they want to search. Now it's time to implement this form. So I will first go to the app.module.ts and import the forms module. So I will put a comma and import forms module, click enter. And if it automatically doesn't come, you can import the forms module from angular/forms. I can close app module and come back to my app.component.ts file. I will first go to the HTML and give the tag to the form. So I'll say hash form is equal to ng form. And after that, I will use the onSubmit method. So I will say submit. On the submit, I will call a method. So I'll say onSubmit. I now have to create this method inside the app component.ts file. So I'll come over here, and below the ng on init, I'll create an onSubmit method. This will take the city name, but instead I'll use a variable, and that will be of type string, and the default value is undefined. So I will pass the value and get the value from here. So I will use a name property and put the name as city, and after that I will use ng model and assign the value of city name, which is our variable, inside the app component.ts file. I can now use the city name inside the form or the ng onSubmit method, and I can call the weather data. So I can move this function out into a private method, and I'll paste it over here. This takes a city name, so I will pass a city name parameter, and that will be of type string. I will pass the city name parameter over here, and as a default value of the city name, I can now say string is equal to Wellington, or you can also mention the city that you live in or you want as a default value. Now, Wellington being the default value, I want to use the private get weather data method and pass the city name that has been passed from the form. So I can use the city name from here, and this will get me the value of the city that the user is searching on. And after that, I can then assign the city name to blank again. Now with all of that in place, let's see how we work on. But before we do that, we also have to call this method over here in the ng on init. So I've saved my application, and if I come back, you can see Wellington populated over here and Wellington's data coming in here as well. This is getting populated because we are not clearing the name. So if we add this over here as well, this will clear out any value in the search box, and you can see this, the value of the weather data still populated, but the search is empty. So if I now go on and search on Auckland and hit enter, you can see now the data for Auckland is now populated, and all of the data is for Auckland. You can see the values changing. Now let's just see if New Delhi works. I'll hit enter, and you can see the weather data for New Delhi. Now to confirm that this is working and the image change is working, let's search for a cold city. So I'll search for let's say Alaska, and I hope there's cold in Alaska. And as you can see now, we get the cold image over here, and you can use your own images. And in Alaska, it's -5 degrees at the moment with the minimum max as well, and all the other information. So you can see it's now transforming and getting the right data from the API directly. These are live values, and our Angular application is now able to get the real world live values from the API. That's it for this video. We have built an amazing Angular application which shows you live weather forecast data by getting live values from an API. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please press the like button to show that you did. I would be keen to know from which city are my viewers watching this video, and what's the temperature in your city. Put your city name and temperature in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss my next upload. I hope you have a great day. I will see you all in the next video.